This video is about using Blazor in ASP.NET for enhancing the front end, the client side, user interface side of websites instead of using JavaScript frameworks like React and Angular. It's been available for about 4 years and is now developed nicely, is easily usable. So I'm demonstrating this using Visual Studio 2022 version 17.33. It pays to keep your Visual Studio as up to date as you can. .NET 7 has just come out, but what I'm demonstrating largely applies to .NET 6. So we're going to start by creating a new project, and if you search for Blazor, you will find two main project templates. You have the Blazor Server app, which is the simpler of the two. It just consists of a single project, and as its name suggests, it is a server-side project. But you still can, however, use Blazor on the client side. The Blazor WebAssembly app consists of three projects: a server-side project, a client-side project, and a class library. That is more complex, but it can produce progressive web apps. It has that advantage. I'm going to stick to the simpler for this demonstration. So we're going to go for a Blazor Server app. I'm going to call this example Blazor app, putting it in a folder, and I'm going next. You can see .NET 6 has got long-term support. .NET 7 isn't in the drop-down list yet, but it will be very shortly. You don't necessarily have to configure it to HTTPS, as you're not going to be deploying this, but if you want, I'm going to leave that ticked. We're not using Docker. What I find, though, to speed things along is to choose the authentication mechanism, and I prefer Microsoft individual accounts. That speeds things up in terms of automatically creating a database for you. Okay, so I'll run it straight away. Here's running with debugging. If you want a quicker version, start without debugging. Okay, this is what you get. You get the menus in a sidebar. The menus are down the side. You've got your register and login because we asked for authentication. You've got two examples of what's new in Blazor, which is what's called a Blazor component. You've got a counter component, which is a button which you can click on. Very exciting. It increases the count by 1 every time you click on the button. Notice it's not doing a page refresh. This is the key thing about Blazor. You're getting the update without having to refresh the page. And you've got an example of a weather forecast, which is simulating picking up data from another web interface service and putting it up as a table. So those two are there. We have pages like in Razor pages, except that only two of them are CSHTML. Oh, sorry, three of them. We've got three the old-fashioned Razor pages, but we've got the new Blazor components here, which end in .razor. So if we look at index.razor, which is the index page, you'll see something you've not seen before. There is a Blazor component called page title. Here is a Blazor component called survey prompt. These are separate components which have been included in this single page. This page is the root page of the website. You may be wondering where the rest of the HTML is. It's in this layout.cshtml. So here we have our HTML5 doc type, our header, which links in our style sheets, our Bootstrap style sheet and our internal style sheets. Here's where the index page will get rendered. So that's where index.razor will be rendered. And then the rest of it is to do with error handling. There is some JavaScript being used as well. But we've also got this host.cshtml, which simply tells us which layout we're using, i.e. the underbar layout page. We also have a main layout.razor, which, as its name suggests, lays out the entire page. Again, it's using this page title component, which is built into Blazor. It has a nav menu section, which is a sidebar. It has the main section, which has a login display, and a body. That's where the body goes. If we look at nav menu, which is another component, we can see this has all the links in the home page, the counter page and the fetch data page. There's also a login display, which is again a component. And then you've got the survey prompt component, which we saw was used in the index page, which consists largely of HTML, though it does have a parameter, which is the title of the page. So the title of the survey prompt, sorry. We also have this imports.razor here, which are global imports. So these usings will affect any of the components. So I'm now looking at the counter.razor as an example of a Blazor component, which consists of two parts. The top area is the typical CS HTML. We've got largely HTML with some C#. So that's the CS HTML format again. But what's different is we can have a code section. This can be in the same page like it is here, or this can be in a separate code behind page. You can move that to a code behind page if you want, like Razor pages. Okay, so what does it do? Well, the key thing here is the button. Here is an event handler. It's calling an on-click event handler, and that event handler will go to a method called increment the count. And here is our method increment count, which has a private int called current count, and that gets incremented when the button is clicked on. So it's a very simple example of a Razor component which has code in it, and when an event is triggered, that code is executed. I have now opened the fetch data.razor component, which, as you can see, can be loaded as a page by the URL fetch data. This is a more complex example because it has code that's injected into it. It has this weather forecast service injected. I'll show you how that's used in a minute. So basically this is a list of weather forecasts displayed as a table with a date, a temperature and so on. On the code part you can see we have a weather forecast array called forecasts, and when the page is initialized, it uses the injected weather forecast service to get a weather forecast for a particular date. So the end result is a table of weather forecasts. To summarize, ASP.NET Core, MVC, Razor Pages and Blazor all use Razor syntax, so their code is a mixture of C# and HTML. But the file types .cshtml are used in Razor Pages and MVC views. When we have a .razor file type, we have a Razor component. Components have the advantage that they can be used in other pages. They can be pages themselves, and components can have components inside them. It's a very sophisticated way of breaking up your code into components which can be reused in various ways. So I'm going to stop this video here because I've summarized what you get from a Blazor Server app, what you get as standard. In the next video we'll look at how to modify that and add some code ourselves.